All right, welcome everybody to the Monday, February 26, 2018 meeting of Kubernetes SIG service catalog. Aaron, why don't you execute the agenda?
Cool. So we're going to do this standard speaker queue. I think everyone knows how that works. Any new faces here today? Looks like no. Cool. All right, let's start out with P. Mori with suggestion. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, so I basically wanted to suggest that, just as we've been doing the spike to get some of the non-happy path cases to be a little bit more functional, that there are basically two things that I think that we should do that will help folks greatly. The first one is to begin working on the duplicate status updates that are, or the multiple status updates that our control loops do. And I actually, I think that Marco has started working on that already. So I'll just, instead of asking folks to volunteer for that one, I'll just say Marco's already doing that one, but it's like the middle of the night for him right now, which is why he doesn't join usually. And the next one would be that we have found, at least at Red Hat, that a lot of users are confused about the finalization behavior of service instances and service bindings. So I was thinking about that a little bit, and one of the issues that we have identified that we'd like to improve for O.2 is to add more complete doc to service catalog. So I wonder if anybody has some cycles to help make that happen, because I think we can work through that a lot better with folks if we have something to point them to that, at more than a walkthrough level, documents what the behaviors they should expect are. And that's basically it.
Cool. I have two quick things. One, it sounds like we've got 3 working groups. We've got status updates, the non-happy path stuff that's already going on, and docs. So it'd be nice to have some folks split out and sort of volunteer for each thing. And I forgot the second one. Jeremy, you have a hand up, so go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to volunteer for docs.
Oh, cool.
All right, that would be great.
I'm sorry, I'm just starting up a doc for all of these working groups. Okay, so it sounds like we're just about done with this part of the agenda. Any last comments, questions, suggestions? Going once? Okay, cool. Niall, go ahead with blocking instance and binding spec updates. Niall, you are muted.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so last week at the non-happy path meeting, we have briefly discussed this issue that we should probably stop blocking instances and bindings updates if there is an operation in progress, because once we have fixed the retries, it means that updates could be blocked for a week, which is not very nice UX, I guess. And so I guess we have 3 options. One is to remove this blocking behavior completely. So the second option is to add some admission controller that would prevent updates, that would be optional, and I don't know, IBM Bluemix or some other installations of service catalog could enable this admission controller if it is still important for them. And the third option, I think, is more flexible than the second one, is to add some option into the broker spec that would say that this particular broker doesn't need this blocking behavior. So by default, I wouldn't enable it, but if the particular broker cares about tracking every single update separately, then it's up to the user to add this flag to the broker spec.
Cool. Comments? Niall, is there an issue or some doc to kind of track this work?
Yeah, there is a link.
Okay, cool. I see it.
I can
Any
send it.
comments here? Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah. First of all, can you hear me okay? I've never used the speaker on the machine before. I always use the headset.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. So I apologize. I haven't really read up on this much. Just sort of watching it from the side. So I don't think this is a implementation detail. I think now you kind of suggested that some implementations, like I think you said like the IBM platform could add a flag or something if we wanted it. I don't think it's an implementation choice. I think this is more related to the spec itself. So if there was some kind of change that we wanted to make here, I think it would have to be in the spec if you really wanted to change something from a drastic perspective. And I don't think it'd be wise to expose this at a broker level or at the end user level, because this is really something that happens under the covers that neither side should really care about. And by that I mean, the spec basically says this header is going to be passed along to tell you who initiated this particular change. That's not the kind of thing that somebody should have to necessarily opt into. It's just part of the spec itself. So I'm not thrilled with the idea of making changes that make us, in essence, violate the spirit of the specification. But like I said, I apologize. I haven't really read much into this issue yet. I need to do that. I apologize.
Go ahead now.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, is there a special wording in the OSD spec about the requirements for this user info? Because I have seen that there is a context or something, can't remember what was it, where you can pass the user ID, but I haven't seen if there is any specifics about like what are the requirements from the OSB spec perspective. This is one thing. Another is, I think that like it's up to the platform how to combine the updates, like as Kubernetes does, right? So like in the end, it's still a valid request, which would say that just the last user is responsible for all the updates which happened since the last update.
Cool. Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, I just pasted a link to the spot in the spec. It's the originating identity header. And basically what it does, it says, this is the end user that caused this particular action to happen. And don't interpret my statements here as saying we need to push back and not make any kind of change in someplace, whether it's in Kube or the spec. I'm just trying to sort of talk about all the various aspects of this issue, because it is a very complicated one. And I understand that blocking updates to the spec is not the Kube way, but that at the point in time was the only way we could figure out how to do this, because if you do batch up a whole bunch of requests to a broker and identify it with just the last user who made the update, that introduces a whole bunch of problems that we weren't necessarily prepared to deal with, at least not a couple months ago when we came up with the solution.
All right, go ahead, Kibbles.
Yeah. I mean, is it so bad that the last, because I think that the behavior that we're describing still fits in the wording here, because it is the last user's action that caused this request to be sent. It's just that the last user's action is like the user has to be aware that they are responsible for the state of the resource that they are submitting, and that state could have been altered earlier by somebody else, but you are ultimately responsible for what you are sending to the broker. So it still seems in line. Yeah, EOF.
Cool. Go ahead, Doug. Doug, you are still muted.
Crap, sorry. Okay. I believe some of the use cases related to this space were around the lines of the first person who made a change has the authority to make that particular change. but for whatever reason, it failed. The next person comes along and doesn't have the authority to make the first change, but they can make the second change. So at that particular point in time, having the wrong user associated with a particular change could actually not end up with the right end results. In other words, in this particular case, the entire thing may be rejected because the second user doesn't have the authority to make the first type of change. So that's one of the reasons why you need to split it out, because different users will have different authority to take different type of actions on the resource itself.
Okay, Niall, go ahead.
Yeah, so I agree that some brokers might have like this fine-grained RBAC on their side. But for example, if we're talking about some, like in our architecture, we're actually doing the RBAC on the Kubernetes side, not on the broker side. So I think that it's not like what I don't like about the current behavior is that because some brokers probably need this fine-grained information about every single change, we actually break the UX for every user. So if it's possible, I would just make this behavior optional if it's critical for some of the brokers. That's all I'm suggesting.
Okay, Kibble, go ahead.
I think a possible solution to that issue would be to have a rollback action that we could do for the spec to put it in the last happy state, just so that the user wouldn't have to edit the spec manually to make it make the changed parameters that they didn't want to take authority to match the current state. So that's an option.
Cool. Go ahead, Paul.
So a rollback thing might be attractive as a user experience, but there are a couple of things that make it hard to do. So, for example, a lot of users are going to take most of their parameters from secrets. And there is not really a way to capture the state of a secret when you update it so that you can roll it back later. So it's going to be tough to make a complete solution that actually solves the rollback thing. And the other thing that I want to point out is that like the emission control that we have right now is also not a complete solution to the problem it's trying to solve, because you can update a secret that holds parameters out of band. And as Niall is just put into the chat, like we're not really blocking those updates. Like we're not blocking updates to secrets that hold parameters at all. So what I would suggest is like, if there's a broker that well, one, at a high level, I don't think that we all have to agree about this. Like, it would be possible to relax these constraints and add a field to the broker spec that allows you to turn it on or turn it off. And we can talk about what the defaults would be around this. But I think that it should be possible to relax these constraints and add a very strict mode that prevents the updates. That's it for me.
Okay. Doug, you are up next.
So I'm trying to figure out whether this is strictly a Kubernetes issue or whether it's something we need to take back to the spec. Noel, do you have a sense for that? Because I'm very uncomfortable with us making a change that's sort of a Kubernetes only change. So for example, a broker in Cloud Foundry is going to see individual requests coming in with the proper user ID, but then in the Kubernetes world, they may, for example, see things batched up. And so they're going to get a different experience between two worlds. And I think that might lead to interop problems. And so there's part of me that tends to think this is more of a spec issue and we should take the conversation over there. But I want to get what other people thought first.
I think it's something we should definitely at least touch on at the level of the spec.
Well, Mike has already mentioned that like the wording in the spec currently is not super clear about these requirements. So I think even if we change the behavior in Kubernetes, it still be valid for the spec. And there are some other examples, like for example, for update requests, Cloud Foundry sends only the diff, and we send all the parameters if even a single parameter has changed currently. So I think we have already cases where there is a different behavior, but both are valid per spec. So I don't know. I think it's fine. We can, like, in the spec, I guess we can write it. Like, it's up to the platform to decide whether to send every request separately or send, like, batch requests.
Okay. Niall, did you have more you wanted to add? Because your hand is up as well. I'll take that as a no.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Okay. Jay, go ahead.
I think one of the driving issues on this was getting into a bad state on an update and not being able to recover. And I think that use case is really important to remember as we, talk about perhaps why we're in this scenario and trying to work around it or work through it.
Okay. That sounds like it would probably be that could probably be part of the non-happy path working group.
Yeah,
so I'll send out after this meeting, probably around 2:30 or 3 my time. I'll send out a doc to the Google group to track all these working groups with just some explanation of how I propose we do it. It's cool with everybody?
Yeah, we did talk about this a lot in the last working group on the non-happy cases, and I think we actually thought there it would be good to bring this back to the larger team discussion.
Okay. All right. Before we do that, though, Doug, you're up next, and I'm just going to make this the last part of the discussion because it sounds like we've got a few more things going on today. So go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, so Noel, would you be willing to open up an issue in the spec so we can remember to talk about it over there?
Sure. The only thing that I'm not sure about, like, do you think that this issue would block any changes in Kubernetes until we clear the phrasing in the spec? Because currently I don't see that the spec, like, explicitly says what should be the behavior of the platform.
Okay, well, we should, if nothing else, if you think it's unclear, then we need to make it clear. But also, is Vile going to be around, or is he traveling a lot recently? Because I remember he was part of the original discussions we had around the design of this, and at that time he really had some wild ideas going back and forth in our brainstorming sessions. In particular, things like queuing up changes to the spec and stuff like that. And I want to make sure that we get the same people in the room to have those discussions again, so people can remember why we either rejected or didn't go down certain paths. I want to make sure Relay is part of that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Cool. All right. So we've got 39 minutes left. It doesn't look like we've got a ton more stuff here. We've got a lot of bullet points, but they don't look huge. Before we move on, Niall and Carolyn, I'm going to just shout out the PRs that you guys want reviewed. So we've got 1748, 1751 for non-happy path related things, and 1756 for provisioning by external ID. So Niall and Carolyn, do you guys have anything more you want to say about either of those?
I can just say that, sorry.
No, go.
Thanks. So I just was going to say that we have already discussed that we need to make 3 changes in service catalog for non-happy paths, and 2 of them are already ready to review, and I'm working on the 3rd one. So please review, because like the 3rd one I think relies on the first 2, so it would be nice to merge them first, and or at least agree on if this behavior is the correct one.
Okay, go ahead, Carolyn.
Oh, I was just going to say that mine is for the 0.2 milestone, and that's really the only notable thing about it.
Cool. All right, Doug, go ahead and talk about QCOM.
Yeah, so a long time ago, I think it was Dan Kahn sent out a note saying that they're willing to offer up either 35-minute sessions or 80-minute sessions to SIGs that want to do some sort of deep dive, face-to-face meeting type thing. And they were going fast. So by the time we got in our requests, the 80-minute sessions were all gone. So we decided to ask for 2 35-minute sessions. And so we got 2 of those, Wednesday and Thursday. So Morgan and Kibbles are going to be doing that presentation. I have a link to the 2 sessions in the agenda doc. And that's it. I just want to make sure people are aware of it. So hopefully offline, Michael and Morgan will start working on the outline and stuff. And I've already started to poke them offline to see if we can get that going to make sure it's not a last minute thing.
Cool. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Yeah, I was just curious, are these intended for people outside of the SIG to learn about it, or is this for us to chat about?
It's for
Whatever.
people outside the SIG. This is not meant to be a working group face-to-face meeting.
Okay.
So in my mind anyway, whether this is the way it turns out or not, it's obviously up to Michael and Morgan. But in my mind, I would think the first session would simply be, since it's only 35 minutes, talk about what is Service Catalog or even the Open Source Broker API slightly, very high-level overview. And then in the second session, talk more about some of the interesting design choices that we had to make and stuff like that. Or some of the arrows we had to take being the first to do things like API aggregation, some of those interesting things we ran into. But that's my initial take on it.
Okay.
So I got a hand up. Kibbles, I think most of us in this call probably have something laying around, slides or documents or anything to contribute. So if you guys want reviews, reach out, I think, to the Google group. That's probably the best place. And we, like I said, probably any of us can help. Not that you guys don't necessarily need it, or not that you guys do necessarily need it, but we're all available. So go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Doug, why don't you say your thing out loud? That would be helpful.
Yeah, just I would assume that both Morgan and Michael would present this to one of these Monday phone calls before KubeCon just to get some feedback and make sure they're not going off the deep end. But maybe my assumption is wrong. Michael can correct me, but that'd be my assumption.
All right, go ahead, Jeremy.
Hey, I'm doing a talk too about Service Catalog with Helm. So if people are willing to review, I'd like to take them up on that too.
Definitely.
Okay, that brings me to an idea that I will share. I'll put my hand up in the chat first to keep with the protocol. Does anyone object to having a 4th working group, very short-lived, for reviewing slides and presentations? Okay,
Yes.
I will write a note for that.
So no objection. Just a question. When you say a working group, do you mean just a group of people that go off on the side and meet on their own and then come back and tell us what's going on, or do you mean formalized meetings aside from this Monday one?
I mean the first one.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll write that up in a brief summary in the post in the group as well, so everyone remembers. All right, we've got next up Carolyn about the face-to-face. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Yeah, I just heard from a number of people in the mailing list that they were interested, but there was a lot of waffling between doing this the day before or the day after the OSB API face-to-face in April. And since it's starting to get close enough that I would have to buy a ticket soon, I was just curious if we could pick a date.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Carolyn. I think that so far people have mostly said either works for them, if I remember correctly. Vile said he'd have to leave halfway through on Thursday. I don't personally see why we couldn't do like half a day both days. That's another option, I guess. Since I'm not sure I can devote 4 whole days to this without spending time to work on other things.
So Niall has an idea to set up a doodle poll. Anyone object to doing that to finalize this? Okay, cool. Niall, you have been voluntold to set up the doodle poll.
Okay, I'm not going to attend it, but I can set up a doodle poll.
So if we doodle, we really need to get an answer like in the next couple days so people can book. The fares are going to start going up.
Okay. Niall, since you're not going, is anyone who? Yeah. Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah, I'll send it out right after this.
Okay, and let's put a deadline on it. Can we maybe say Wednesday?
Yep.
Anyone object?
Yeah, Wednesday's fine. Just I request, please don't do two half days. I think part of the reason people may not do both is they don't want to necessarily make the trip longer than they have to, but just doing half day just forces them to get the worst of both worlds. So either pick Monday or Thursday and let the chips fall where they may.
Okay. Alrighty. We've got the action item for Carolyn. I have an action item to set up these working groups that'll come later today. And we have 32 minutes left. Does anyone have anything else they would like to add? Any rants, questions, comments? Anyone want to share what they did this weekend? Man, nobody did anything fun this weekend?
Come on,
All
Jeremy.
right.
Do you want to share about BYOB?
When you're traveling back and forth from conferences, there isn't much to do on the weekend other than sleep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, enjoy your next 31 minutes back from the day. And I will talk to everyone soon on the Google group.
Yeah.
All right, see you, everybody.